Hey everyone, Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Big 12 podcast. Today it is the 19th of September, 2022. And on today's show, we take a look at the teams joining the Big 12. How did their weekends go? And also a list of questions that we have for some of the teams in the Big 12. And also look at the top 25 to see where the Big 12 teams are sitting currently. All that and more coming up on today's show.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Once again, Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Big 12 podcast. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every single day. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Our push continues, trying to get to 2,500 right now. We need every single subscription that we can get. Tap that bell for notifications. Find us wherever you get your podcasts, on audio platforms, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of those places. All right, so let's get to the task at hand, a check-in on the teams that are joining the Big 12 Conference. And kind of the hottest team coming out of week number 2 was the BYU Cougars, and for good reason. They had that, really impressive performance against Baylor, a 26-20 win in double overtime after, not having Gunnar Romney, not having Puka Nacua. Well, that 26-20 win came after a really thumping on the road against USF. They beat them pretty badly. But then they had the reality check this week, and kind of the hot topic for BYU was, man, if they get by Oregon, they're in really good shape because they play Wyoming, they play Utah State, then they play Notre Dame in Las Vegas. Arkansas was the game that we really circled and thought, wow, that could be if we get an undefeated BYU at that point, that could be really interesting. Liberty on the road, followed by Boise, Utah Tech, and then Stanford. So they had a schedule that is full of Power 5 teams that had some good opportunities. And, if you make it through all of this, you got to think with wins against Notre Dame, Oregon, Baylor, Arkansas, and Stanford, along with BYU, Boise, Liberty, all those teams. Like, it looks like an actual schedule. It looks like a schedule a Power 5 team would play. And for the purposes of discussing the college football playoff, we thought there was some momentum there. Maybe, hey, they could do it. Now, look, that seems so far off to me that I'm not sure it bared a ton of talking about, but it was a storyline that definitely national media were talking about after their convincing win. Well, that took a huge reality check this weekend. They lost 41-20 on the road in Autzen Stadium. That's a place where it's really difficult for teams to go in and win, but they were on the wrong end of a really good Bo Nix game. He was 13 of 18 for 222 and 2 scores. They ran the football really effectively, though, especially in that first half. I felt like they were just moving the ball as much as they wanted to. And they did a good job stopping the run. And I thought, for as physical and as good as BYU looked in their previous game against Baylor, they were not there this week. And that's one of the difficult things, BYU's have to deal with when they play in the Big 12. I mean, you have to play Iowa State, Oklahoma State, and, those teams back-to-back, play a Baylor, back-to-back, Kansas State. Like, I'm not saying they're all as physical as Baylor, and, as Oregon, like, I'm not sure you're going to get, that tough back-to-back in the Big 12 all the time, but you're going to have a lot of physical teams in this league, and sticking up at home on the road is important. They ran for 24 carries for 61 yards and a touchdown. BYU did. They actually had a good amount of success in the passing game, but they really got wiped out early in this first half. BYU went down 10-0. And then they went down 24-7 into the locker room. I mean, this one felt like it was just kind of one-way traffic. And at one point, this game was actually 38-7. So that 21-point final score line really does not indicate that, how much of a blowout this game was. And I think it's a step back for BYU. But, I think it was bound to happen. I mean, look at that first 3 games at USF, home for Baylor, and then on the road at Autzen Stadium. I mean, that's difficult. That's a difficult trio, especially when you take out Puka Nacua and Gunnar Romney. I'm not saying this game would have been a win for BYU if those guys were there, but you could tell the passing game was just kind of, while it was somewhat successful, like A lot of it was picked up in garbage time. They just could not move the ball as effectively as they wanted to. And they called a really bad swing pass early in this game on fourth down into the flat and 5 yards and just got nowhere near it. And I thought at that point, it really felt like the momentum was all where it needed to be for Oregon. It just did not feel like BYU was in this game. And, there were moments where okay, at 10-7, okay, it's close. Isaac Rex, great tight end, but they're really good, BYU, when they can deploy all of those guys that they've got catching the football. And that includes the young man they just I've really found has been pretty good, Chase Roberts, the freshman. That includes Isaac Rex. That includes Nakua. That includes Romney. But when you take out those guys, the diversity of the offense, it's kind of, it's 2 of the 4 guys I just listed. It just goes away. And so against a team like Oregon at home, who really needed that win, it just wasn't going to go their way. Now they have to reset because once again, that schedule is very difficult. And ECU, not a team that's going to roll over for them. That's later in the season. Wyoming just got a big win. And then they've got Utah State also coming up here. I think that game is a Friday night game, I want to say, for them. Let me double check here. Thursday night game. They have Utah State next week. So it's a Thursday night game. They'll be at home. So they can rip off a couple wins there and get themselves back in kind of momentum shape before they face Notre Dame, who we think has another good defensive front, rather. I think it's important they kind of get that, rested and ready to go. And then because they have Notre Dame and Arkansas back-to-backs. So as a back-to-back. So that's important for them to get that rolling. All right. The second team I want to talk about is a team that we've already mentioned. I mentioned them yesterday, but I think that because of where they were sitting this season, Houston was a team that we all thought, or at least I thought, had a chance to run the table. I thought they were positioned well to be this year's Cincinnati team, and that has just not happened for them. Now, we have to mention that injury to McCaskill, their starting running back, they had suffered in camp or suffered last year in spring, or I guess earlier this spring, has been a huge, huge blow for them. But the problem for them is that they cannot run the football very effectively, and their defense is just giving up points in bunches and bunches. I know it was triple overtime the first game, but give up 35 in that one. Then they give up 33 in the next one. It was double overtime, so kind of numbers get a little skewed. But 48 against Kansas in a game they're winning 14-0. This was one of the best third down defenses in all of America last year. And I thought Kansas just had their way with them. I think especially, let me double check there on third down to see how they did. Kansas, was 7 for 12 on third down in this game and had no problem picking up those. It felt like they had a ton of success on third down, to be honest. And so Houston, just got the doors blown off them at one point in this game on defense. They made it close in the end, but their offense just is not as explosive as I thought it would be. You got a guy like Nathaniel Dell there, and you think that would help with them. I know Tayshaun Henry is a guy that they thought would really get going, and he's only rushing for 2 yards a carry. As a team, they're running for 3.6 yards per carry right now. Clayton Tune is their second leading rusher. And so they are just having a tough time with offensive balance. It feels like, while Dell's off to a really nice start, they're trying to figure out, all right, who else do they have here? And kind of missing McCaskill, it feels like that was a big piece for them on offense. Their schedule is still somewhat favorable for them. I'm just it feels like they're not going to run through it. They have to run through that schedule at this point now to get 10-2 and then get 11-2 with the win, which it's going to feel really difficult now. You kind of wonder about their chances to be the non-group of 5 team in a New Year's Six bowl. You have to wonder, it's them, it's Cincinnati, obviously UCF is still in that mix. Out west, you're kind of wondering, hey, who's that going to be? The Sun Belt obviously has got some good teams, and you kind of think that App State will be the ones with that win over A&M who put themselves in position depending on how their schedule goes. So not saying Houston's out of it yet. Their goals are still within reach. If you win the AAC, you normally are in pretty good shape for that New Year's Six game. But I'm just not sure if they're that good. And look, the thing is, they do avoid UCF and they do avoid Cincinnati in their schedule. So I think that's something important to notice for the Houston Cougars. Also, wins this weekend for UCF and for Cincinnati. Let's go with UCF first. This game ends up being against FAU. The final score, not one of those that indicates how good close to kind of the game was. This was a game that it was close later in the game, but a second half shutout really helped UCF. I mean, I think they got a Florida Atlantic got a pickoff return. They got towards the end zone, and I think UCF blocked the field goal. Right, really impressive play. Blocked the field goal there to end up stopping that score, and they ended up winning 40-14. So this one got a little out of hand late, but I was able to watch them against Louisville, and it felt like John Rice Plumlee, like really good. He's just not the most accurate passer in the world sometimes. I like there's a reason why I know Matt Corral's in the NFL now, but there's a reason why they brought Matt Corral in and they end up switching quarterbacks. They had John Rice Plumlee also playing wide receiver because he was such a good athlete, but he was 16 for 34 for 131 and a pick against Louisville. So it kind of feels like when the competition takes a little bit of a step up that he does struggle, especially in the passing game. But this was a pretty dynamic performance, for the most part, say the interception for him. He threw for 339 yards. He ran for 121 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like, he is a dynamic player, a dynamic athlete. You just kind of wonder, when they do play that kind of top level competition, how good is that going to be for them? But it was good to see Isaiah Bowser getting the ends in this game. I just kind of thought a win they needed, after a home loss against Louisville in a game, like it felt like they were kind of poised to win that. I know there was rain and kind of the conditions made it weird or whatever. But still, it's a good environment. I thought they should have won that game. They got beat by a Malik Cunningham. Great game. It's kind of, that's kind of the way it goes. They've got Georgia Tech at home coming this Saturday. They could put the nail in the coffin for Jeff Collins. I think it's very much in play. And I don't think Gus Malzahn would be a candidate for Georgia Tech. I think they're going to go a different direction than that. But I wouldn't be surprised if they at least make that call. I would not be shocked if they make that call when Jeff Collins ultimately does get the axe. Last one to talk about here. Didn't catch a ton of this one, but a win for Cincinnati. They're kind of back on the horse now. 38-17 win on the road against Miami of Ohio. And this game, Ben Bryant, methodical performance. And he ends up throwing for a lot of yards. I just never am blown away by how good he is. They ran the football really well in this game, 137 yards. And really, McClellan was the one who ran the ball really well. Charles McClellan. He ran for over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns for Cincinnati, get them now to 2-1. And the thought is for me, all right, let's just see how good their defense is because they got toasted a little bit against Arkansas. Kind of curious to see if they can not recreate what they had last year, but they've got a great test in Indiana coming up. This is the return trip for Indiana, so it'll be at home. So another shot at a Power 5 team. Indiana coming off a dramatic win over Western Kentucky at home. So I think this game, obviously, Cincinnati should be favored, but Indiana, we know is not always the easiest team to deal with. I know that they struggled a little bit with them early on in the game last year, able to take control of that game eventually. And their schedule is a little bit tougher. They do have to go to SMU, look pretty good, and UCF back-to-back. They also have Tulane, but Cincinnati, once again, it would be remiss if we didn't count them in the conversation for a team that can make that push to a New Year's 6. All right, let's take a look now at the Big 12 in the top 25. And we'll use the AP poll because Coach's poll I don't really care about. Oklahoma checks in at number 6. And then down the line in the top 10, you've got Oklahoma State at number 9. They actually dropped 1 spot this week for Kentucky, which I thought was kind of odd, but it's voting, whatever. So Oklahoma State blows out Pine Bluff, and then they get sent down. Once again, a little odd, but whatever. Baylor is checking in at number 17. Future Big 12 winner BYU is at number 19. The Texas Longhorns come in at number 22. And then receiving votes out of the Big 12, you do have the Kansas Jayhawks, who have received 23 votes. Now, I actually was surprised to see Iowa State's not receiving any votes either. I thought they get some love, but I guess the win against Iowa is not enough for people. And it was a pretty ugly game, too. So they're 3-0, not there. But once again, there is currently 1, 2, 3, 4 current Big 12 teams and 5 current/future Big 12 teams in the top 25 right now. BYU gets dropped 7 spots, which I think is fair for them. Texas gets dropped a spot after a 41-20 win over UTSA, which I thought was interesting. A&M only went up 1 spot, which I thought was curious too. All right, so the conversation around this too is, should KU be ranked, right? People are kind of wondering, should Kansas be ranked? And to me, it doesn't really matter that much. If they beat Duke this weekend, I think they will be ranked. I think that will happen for them. They beat them impressively, I should say. They should be ranked. But I think there's just trepidation on putting Kansas there because, people are still wondering, like, okay, they won 2 games last year, right? So, it's the same group of guys. When they play, they step up in competition, which they eventually will here relatively soon. They play West Virginia, who's a legit team in the Big 12. So, I think there's a lot of questions about that. I think for people who are not familiar with the Big 12, and look, it's not like I don't have any of myself. I do have some questions about how good KU is. Also, to the folks that were talking about, me with my Jalen Daniels take yesterday, I was just saying, like, he is an improving passer. He is an improving passer. He is a good passer right now, very, very good passer right now. But I think a lot of the pure passing is being set up by some of the stuff that he does with his legs, which is it's not a knock on him. I just think it's like I think the upshot here is there's more room for him to grow as a passer. Now you say, well, his QBR is fantastic. Yeah, I get that. But look, he put it on in terms of like efficiency. He was off the charts efficient against Tennessee Tech, right? In terms of passing, he was off the charts efficient against Tennessee Tech. He was not crazy efficient in the last 2 games. So he was 15 for 18, which is 83% against Tennessee Tech. Against West Virginia, he was 18 for 29 for 219 and 3 touchdowns. And then against Houston, he was 14 for 23 for 158 and 3 touchdowns. So low 60s completion percentage. It's not bad. It's not what I'm saying. It's just like there is, the results for him have been really good. I just think there's room for him to get better and grow, which is good. I don't think he's clearly not a finished product yet, but I don't think this is like if he had a game where he really just struggled passing, I wouldn't be totally surprised. Also, if there was a game where they were able to, if they get controlled at the line of scrimmage, let's just say a Baylor controls them at the line of scrimmage and he can't use his legs as much. The pure passing is not there. Like, that would not shock me. It's okay that he's coming along as a pure passer. This guy is in his 3rd year, but like, how legit were the first couple years for him with the players that were around him, right? This is a guy who's not he hasn't played a ton of football. Sure, he's been around for 3 years, but he's played 3 games this year, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games last year. And those weren't he didn't play a ton in the first 3 of those games. And then he did play a good amount his freshman year, but it's been so sporadic and it's been with different coaches. So this guy's finally kind of getting his feet under him as the bona fide leader, right? As he is the full-time starting quarterback for a improving team that looks like they're going to put a scare into a lot of people. They've already gotten, once again, they're 3-0. And my point with this is should they be ranked? I don't know. I think they got some pretty decent, I think the 2 road wins, if this were college basketball, right? And they picked up 2 wins, and this is actually a funny comp. I'm using college basketball for Kansas football. But if they were to pick up these 2, if they were to pick up 2 road wins like they picked up, they would probably be ranked in college basketball. They'd definitely be moved off whatever bubble there is in college basketball. If they were a bubble team. Now, Kansas never really a bubble team. But you understand my point here. So they're picking up quality wins, and their offense looks really good. And I think Jalen Daniels is good. My point was he has got room to improve. He is nowhere near a finished product as a passer, and I think that's a good thing for Kansas and their future. All right, so a couple questions I have for some of these other teams. I'm going to get to these real fast and just kind of stuff we're going to think about during the course of the week. What do we make of Texas? I think we're going to get a good answer on that coming up, and I'm just going to leave, not going to give a ton of these, but just kind of leave them with you all so you guys can stir on them a bit, and we'll revisit them later on in the week. This team record-wise, I'm not sure what's going to end up because the injuries for them, if they keep piling up, once again, they've already suffered 3 pretty significant injuries: offensive line, wide receiver, there's suspension at tight end. There's an injury at quarterback. I mean, these guys are dealing with a lot of injuries already. There's a couple injuries. There's actually 3 injuries at quarterback. There's an injury to Quinn Ewers. There's an injury to Hudson Card, and there's an injury to Malik Murphy. 2 of those guys are out right now. Card is currently playing. So you kind of wonder, like, what is it going to end up like? Will their record be indicative of who they are? They'd be a better team than record because maybe some injury stuff and how they succeed and how they finish off games. That's a big question there. Baylor, I'm really curious about Baylor. Actually, my 2 final questions about Baylor and Iowa State. Can Baylor take Xavier Hutchinson out of the game? What happens to Iowa State when they take out a Xavier Hutchinson? Can Hunter Deckers find new targets, find other guys to work with? Because right now it's really just the Xavier Hutchinson show. The other guys obviously getting involved, but like that's the key to the offense. I mean, Xavier Hutchinson has just been a madman this year so far, and Hunter Deckers is obliging him in this. He's throwing them the ball as much as he could and should in some ways. But I'm curious to see what happens if they take him away. And then for Baylor, like how good is this Baylor team? Is it going to be as good as we thought it could be at the end of the year? I'm really curious to see where they go. So some stuff I'm just marinating on right now. All right, that will do it for today's show. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at LOBig12. You guys can find me at JoshNeighbors_. Find the show of each podcast and on YouTube as well. Make sure you guys subscribe, like the videos, notifications, leave your comments below about what you all think. Will we see a new Big 12 team in a New Year's 6 game this year? I think is a big question about this. There's a lot of flaws in them, but they've got some talent, obviously, across all of these rosters. So leave us your thoughts on that. All right, till next time, my friends, as always, stay safe.